In the beginning, when the universe first began during the Big Bang, physicists believed that there were two distinct types of material that emerged from the singularity: matter and antimatter. When the two versions of matter collided with each other, they would mutually destroy each other in a spectacular display of large explosions. In the end, almost all of it was destroyed, but a small, tiny fraction of matter that ended up surviving simply because there was slightly more matter than antimatter. Now, you might look at that destruction and say, wow, that's a lot of chaos. But objectively speaking, destruction is technically a necessary part of the creation process, and chaos is technically a necessary element to enable change. Chaos is what allowed the original singularity to erupt during the Big Bang in the first place, and destruction caused the circumstances that allowed for the natural ordered processes of the universe to form what we see today. Even a healthy forest requires the occasional forest fire in order to allow new growth to flourish. I think that there's nothing wrong with accepting loss and destruction as a natural process of the universe. It just is what it is. And we can learn from these patterns and rules in nature, which will allow us to develop a better relationship with the world and ourselves. But if there's somebody out there that actually enjoys the destruction process, or maybe even venerates it or worships it, well, that would be Satan worship. The ancient Egyptians understood the primordial forces behind the creation of the universe as a set of 8 gods. These are the old gods that formed the rules and processes of everything that makes up our reality as we know it. These proto-gods even created many of the other gods that came later. These 8 gods split up into 4 pairs of 2, each coupling into 1 male and 1 female, and I think that that's supposed to represent the balance and harmony behind the processes of the universe. None of these gods are around anymore, you might notice. Even within their own legends and stories, most of them have died and joined the underworld. The Hebrews considered these 8 gods to be defeated or dead when Yahweh unleashed the plagues onto Egypt during the Exodus. Today, we would consider these 8 gods to be the fallen angels, but the Egyptians called them the 8 gods of chaos. The Book of Enoch tells us that the 7 planets we see in our night sky are actually representative of the 7 fallen angels. They're apparently being held prisoner in the lower heavens by Yahweh and awaiting Judgment Day for their crimes of teaching humanity forbidden practices. The Greeks, the Romans, and many other cultures also considered the planets in our sky to be representative of gods. We even use a lot of those god names today. 8 chaos gods, but 7 planets. You'll notice 1 is missing. Did Enoch miss one, or what's going on? Well, there's a dark body in our solar system. A lot of people think that it might be Pluto, but it's actually much more likely to be another dark body that appears in our night sky every 400 years. A dark star, or what people call Planet X. Check out my series on the apocalypse for more information on that. But whatever that invisible planet is, that particular dark body represents the invisible god Armoured, or the hidden god. You should definitely check out my video about the fallen angels for more context on what the world was like during the days of the fallen angels. The 8 old gods were very rarely represented with human heads. They were almost always depicted with animal heads, such as Kek. She was the snake goddess of the night. She was the bringer of the night. In fact, according to Egyptian religion, she's still responsible for bringing the night even in the underworld. But more importantly, her male counterpart was the frog god Kek, the chaos god of darkness, the bringer of darkness. Since 2016, this frog deity has gained a lot of notoriety and popularity on the internet, especially during the more right-wing or alt-right spheres of meme culture. I don't think that there's a single mega member out there that hasn't at least typed one Kek instead of an LOL under a Pepe the Frog meme. In fact, they've kind of invaded the entire internet. You can't go to a single serious forum post or article about the frog god Kek without finding a bunch of comments saying that his real name is Pepe. Now, the cartoon Pepe the Frog, he was never meant to actually embody any of these ideals. In fact, the creator of Pepe canonically killed his character off in his storyline in hopes that it would dissuade the alt-right from using Pepe in their memes. It did not. And I should also mention that not every Pepe the Frog meme is a right-wing meme or an alt-right meme. It is just a meme, bro. But I will admit that I have learned to see a Pepe the Frog meme as a possible red flag. Oh, and there was also the Kekistan movement. Oh god, I can't even believe that I'm mentioning this. Kekistan was an ironic online movement. Sorry. Ironic online movement. The way they sold it is it was all supposed to be just memes and jokes. But in the end, it became very obvious that Kekistan was just a soft sell for Nazism. And they made a flag. It's supposed to be a joke, but it's very clearly designed based off of the 1940s German flag. So just a joke. I never had anything to do with Kekistan. I never participated in that. I had like one guy throw up a Kekistan flag in front of me during a selfie at a convention once, but you know, people do shit like that at conventions. But there's an infamous photo of a bunch of internet influencers and YouTubers. In the photo, they threw up a Kekistan flag. What's funny is I was actually there when they took that picture. There was like a crowd of YouTubers out front, and as soon as I saw that group gather together, I just walked away. Even if they didn't have that flag though, there were a handful of characters that were in this crowd that really bothered me. So whatever the game was that these guys were playing back then, I didn't like it. It was sketchy. These guys were sketchy. And of course I knew that one day this stupid flag would bite everyone in the ass. And it didn't take long because eventually the Kekistan flags started showing up at legitimate Nazi protests and demonstrations. The point is, don't ever join an online community like this. Just stay away from things like this, because in the end, they almost always turn out to either be like a psyop or a recruitment program for Nazis. Oh, and this is totally unrelated to the video. I wasn't even gonna say this, but also the Proud Boys tried to recruit me. And this was before anybody even knew what they were. They were pretending to just be like a magazine, and they were interviewing me for an article that obviously never got published. And then after they turned out to be Donald Trump's brown coats, it became pretty obvious that that wasn't an interview for a magazine. They were trying to recruit me. Yeah, there's scary shit out there. Anyways, Kekistan. I'm not even saying this to be funny, but Kekistan was legitimately one of the most cringe things to ever come out of the internet. If you were part of that back then because you didn't know any better, I forgive you, but just stop, okay? Cut that shit out, please. And how has this meme culture evolved? Well, fast forward to today, and now you have Elon Musk declaring himself the king of Kek or some shit on Twitter. And I'm sure that he's doing this knowing full well that it's coming across as a blatant dog whistle to online covert Nazis. And now you've got this army of Pepe the Frog avatars that'll worship and defend anything that Elon Musk and Donald Trump do, regardless of how illogical, hateful, or evil it is. And here's the thing, the Nazis know that we hate them. That's why they still dog whistle. That's why they still pretend to not be Nazis. The Nazis know full well that we will never accept them willingly. They know that if they admitted what they were and we knew how they felt, that we would all collectively reject them. So even today, you're still going to find them hiding behind their frogs and their irony to hide their hatred. hatred. The people that are telling you that there are no Nazis are the Nazis. They're everywhere. The era of Pepe and Kek have truly brought an era of darkness to the world. Disregard for our fellow man is now openly celebrated. Whether the Kek god of darkness is real or not is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. The destruction and chaos that his modern followers and worshippers have brought the earth today is immeasurable. I remember a few years ago, maybe it was right at the beginning of Trump's first presidency, was the first time that I heard somebody bring up the conspiracy theory that the Kek movement is connected to the frog god of chaos from Egypt. They said that they noticed this when they realized how much irony and chaos was being used in the rise of Donald Trump's popularity. In the end times, according to the book of Revelation, the world is supposed to experience a mass delusion. The Christians call it the Great Deception. Apparently, Yahweh sends mass delusion across humanity during the end times to make it difficult for everyone to understand and make meaningful decisions about what is safe and logical to do during these chaotic times. Priests and theologians talk about the mass delusion as if it's one big deception, a single event that happens that changes humanity. So they think that it's going to be something like a fake alien invasion. Christians even think that global warming is the mass delusion, but it's not going to be like that. The mass delusion is way more subtle. It puts the B in subtle. Right now, as we speak, we are currently experiencing the peak of this delusion. Revelation explains that this delusion will be so powerful and so believable that it could have the power to deceive the very elect of the earth if that were possible. The mass delusion will be so believable that even the most powerful saints on the earth could hypothetically be deceived by it if it were possible. But it's not possible. I know it's saying it in a weird way, but it's trying to give you hope that there will be a handful of people that can see it. So, would you like some help figuring out this delusion? Let me explain. Allow me to introduce you to Yuri Bezmenov, former KGB agent who in the 80s tried to educate Americans on the ways that they're being manipulated through the media, as well as being manipulated through education and by politicians and other leaders that communicate to us with authority about various important subjects.
Our conversation is with Mr. Yuri Alexandrovich Bezmenov. He was the son of a high-ranking Soviet Army officer. He had an outstanding career with Novosti, which was and still is, I should say, the press arm or the press agency of the Soviet Union. It turns out that this is also a front for the KGB.
The useful idiots, the leftists who are idealistically believing in the beauty of Soviet socialist or communist or whatever system, when they get disillusioned, they become the worst enemies. That's why my KGB instructors specifically made a point: never bother with leftists. Forget about these political prostitutes. Aim higher. This was my instruction. Try to get into large circulation, established conservative media. Reach, filthy rich movie makers, intellectuals, so-called academic circles. Cynical, egocentric people who can look into your eyes with angelic expression and tell you a lie. These are the most recruitable people, people who lack moral principles, who are either too greedy or suffer from self-importance. They feel that they matter a lot. These are the people who KGB wanted very much to recruit.
I mentioned Yuri's 1984 interview in a previous video I did about the media being evil. I was trying to find a clever way to slowly introduce you to the idea that foreign entities have been infiltrating American media, trying to manipulate you for years, feeding you propaganda and lies, dividing you, getting you angry at each other, demoralizing your nation. It used to be taboo to even mention Yuri. You'd be called a conspiracy theorist. But thank God, the normies are starting to catch on to this, because I've seen like a dozen videos in the last month all explaining this exact principle.
Ideological subversion is the process which is legitimate overt and open. You can see it with your own eyes. All you have to do, all American mass media has to do, is to unplug their bananas from their ears, open up their eyes, and they can see it. There's no mystery. There's nothing to do with espionage. I know that espionage, intelligence gathering, looks more romantic. But in reality, the main emphasis of the KGB is not in the area of intelligence at all. Only about 15% of time, money, and manpower is spent on espionage as such. The other 85% is a slow process which we call either ideological subversion or active measures or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country.
That's Yuri's most important point, is that in the end, Americans will become so demoralized and so divided that regardless of the abundance of good information, people will be completely incapable of coming to logical conclusions of what is in their best interest to do.
It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in 4 basic stages. First one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. This is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students. The result you can see. Most of the people who graduated in the 60s, dropouts or half-baked intellectuals, are now occupying the positions of power in the government, civil service, business, mass media, educational system. You are stuck with them. You cannot get rid of them. They are contaminated. They are programmed to think and react to certain stimuli in a certain pattern. You cannot change their mind, even if you expose them to authentic information. Even if you prove that white is white and black is black, you still cannot change the basic perception and the logic of behavior.
Thank God the normies are starting to catch on to these many decades of effects on the American people from Russian propaganda.
You have so-called the period of normalization. It may last indefinitely. Normalization is a cynical expression borrowed from Soviet propaganda. When the Soviet tanks moved into Czechoslovakia in '68, Comrade Brezhnev said, "Now the situation in brotherly Czechoslovakia is normalized." This is what will happen in the United States if you allow all these schmucks to bring the country to crisis, to promise people all kind of goodies and the paradise on earth, to destabilize your economy, to eliminate the principle of free market competition, and to put a big brother government in Washington, D.C., with benevolent dictators like Walter Mondale, who will promise lots of things, never mind whether the promises are fulfillable or not. He will go to Moscow to kiss the bottoms of new generation of Soviet assassins, never mind. He will create false illusions that the situation is under control. Situation is not under control. Situation is disgustingly out of control.
People will become so polarized that there will be 2 completely different worlds of logic operating simultaneously. And that's where we're at today. Half of the population has essentially become self-destructive, and they've just shut out all of reality. They're operating entirely on emotion.
Most of the American politicians, media, and educational system trains another generation of people who think they are living at a peacetime. False. The United States is in the state of war, undeclared total war against the basic principles and the foundations of this system. And the initiator of this war is not Comrade Andropov, of course. It's the system. However ridiculous it may sound, the world communist system or the world communist conspiracy. Whether I scare some people or not, I don't give a hoot. If you are not scared by now, nothing can scare you.
Have you ever tried to have a conversation with a MAGA supporter before? It feels like you're talking to a brick wall. What Yuri is talking about, this is exactly why it's impossible to get through to these people. This is exactly why they operate like a cult. They're so beaten down and demoralized that they have no connection to reality. They have no faith in what they themselves see and hear. They only know their own pain, their own anger, their own hatred. Anytime you try to have a conversation with them, you can't actually get through to them. They're not having a sincere exchange of ideas. They're not open to being told that they're wrong. They're not even making the arguments because they're trying to convince you that they're right. They're only making the arguments that they make to justify their hatred. They've become selfish. But we should pity them and forgive them, for they know not what they do. These are a defeated people. But now we know what we're working with here, because we have information coming out saying that it's statistically likely that Trump was always an asset of the Kremlin. With the absolute deluge of Russian influence coming in to get Trump over that final hurdle in his last election, it became way too obvious that they would do anything to have him in power. The Russians love this guy, and Trump doesn't even try to hide it anymore.
Would a Russian oligarch be eligible for a gold card?
Yeah, possibly. Hey, I know some Russian oligarchs that are very nice people.
But you don't have to be paranoid about it. What actually happens now, that unlike myself, you have literally several years to live on unless the United States wake up. The time bomb is ticking. With every second, the disaster is coming closer and closer. Unlike myself, you will have nowhere to defect to.
What's interesting about the chaos god Kek is that in many of his depictions, there are accompanying hieroglyphs that depict a woman in a sitting position, and she appears to be looking up at some sort of upright, flat object. So the conspiracy theorists have suggested that this is Kek sitting at a computer manipulating the world through the internet. Now that couldn't possibly be true for a few reasons, but I do like the idea of that, because that got me thinking about how it could be Kek working through the internet. Kek's power really more comes from manipulating people through the very idea of imagery. Kek's power is imagery. The Black Mirror never shows you the truth. Even a nearly perfectly polished black obsidian mirror only shows us a reversed image of reality, mildly distorted. There are countless effects that imagery can have on the subconscious mind. We can become so transfixed with the images that our devices show us that we can basically become sucked into those worlds as if they are reality. Or worse, imagery can be used to completely misrepresent reality, making us believe in a false world that's completely divorced from real life. People can become so fully enveloped in the imagery that their phone shows them that they'll forget that they're even looking at a device. This sitting figure hieroglyph is not depicting the Kek god himself sitting at a computer. This is a woman sitting in front of a polished brass mirror or a black obsidian mirror. Kek, the bringer of darkness, has allowed humanity to see ourselves through the darkness of the Black Mirror. I know there are a million people out there that have already made the comparison, pointing out that smartphones and other devices are just the modern version of the Black Mirror. I mean, these screens show us an ideal version of ourselves and our world around us. We can use this to see whatever we want, basically. Things that exist and don't exist. But because of that, we can't ever really know what we're seeing is real. In fact, we could be looking at something that is completely real, but we would have so little context and understanding of the reality of that situation that we wouldn't be able to bring ourselves to believe it. And people have learned today that if they're feeling a little bit sad, all they need to do is type a couple things into this machine and it'll show them something that'll make them happy. But the Black Mirror does not give you happiness. While you're distracted by your feelings of euphoria, the Black Mirror takes something very important from you. Essentially, by engaging with these black mirrors and these screens, technically we are worshiping the Black Mirror god. Obsessing with these screens, obsessing with the ideal version of yourself that it shows you, obsessing with the hyped up version of reality that it creates for you, that's Kek worship. The mass delusion of revelation isn't just about the internet and the media being used against us to manipulate perception of reality. This isn't just about the government and the CIA tricking you. We're just at the climax. This is just what it looks like when we're at peak peak delusion. The mass delusion of revelation is about the very concept of being able to see reflections of ourselves and reality through a screen in and of itself. Engaging with these screens and allowing ourselves to believe anything that it shows us, that's the deception. There's something that's happening to this lady in the hieroglyph looking at her own reflection in the mirror that also happens to us when we allow ourselves to be transfixed by the images that these devices show us. Something changed about humanity when we were given the ability to see a perfect reflection of ourselves in a polished piece of brass. Our perception of reality was changed, but more importantly, the perception we have about ourselves was completely altered. The very first thing that I learned in media class when I was 17 years old is that the medium is the message. It was actually a Canadian that coined that phrase, and at the time, I think he was talking about television. The medium is the message means that the medium through which you are consuming your media is itself the message. This device is the message. The whole point of television programming is not the television shows. The whole point of television programming is to convince you to have a television in your house. The point is, it doesn't matter what you're looking at on these devices. It doesn't matter what you like or hate. It doesn't matter what your opinions are. It doesn't matter what your political views are. All that matters is that you continue to engage with what is on the screen. As long as you keep buying into the false reality that they present to you on these devices, as long as you keep investing your time and your emotions and your money on the characters that they present to you on these devices, that's all that matters in the end. Stay engaged. That's the message here. Pay attention to this. Believe this. Invest in this. This is important. This provides you everything. This is a tool you need to trust. You can't live without this. The things this shows you are the important issues. The people this shows you are the important people. This is reality. This is the real world. But they were lying to you the entire time, guys. These screens never showed us the truth once. I don't know how to make this more clear. This is not real life. This is not ever going to show you reality. The world as it's presented to us through this screen is the mass delusion. Do you get it? We've been in the mass delusion for at least 80 years. This was the entire point I was trying to get across in my Operation Mockingbird video. They convinced the Western world that the television was a necessary focal point for every home, just so that they could propagandize to you straight into your living room. Like, this went way back before the television. Everybody used to get all of their entertainment and news through the radio, and the radio had everything back then. News, music, talk shows, even fictional programming. Like, they would perform stories using voice actors and Foley artists. But we should have all just collectively figured out that radios and media devices are simply propaganda machines when we saw that Hitler forced all of his German citizens to have a radio in each of their homes so that he too could propagandize directly to their home. I mean, hell, when Hitler does it, it's propaganda. Oh God, stay away from that. But when America does it, hey, that's entertaining. That's culture. Coca-Cola. Part of the reason that they mix factual news programming on the same network with fictional entertainment programming is to disorient us. Our mind sort of can't tell the difference between the two on some level. We go to the same network to get happy, sad, informed, angry, entertained. We go to the same network to both learn things, but then also shut off our mind and just relax. And it sort of keeps our subconscious mind in this constant state of suspended disbelief anytime we're consuming information through a screen or a piece of media. Anytime that we're transfixed by a piece of media, anytime we're paying way too much attention to our screen, our minds become susceptible to believing things they wouldn't normally believe. Isn't that crazy? Consuming our information this way diminishes our ability to logically process this information. This whole time, we've been investing ourselves and our emotions into something that was never real. The problem really is our own subconscious mind. When we're looking at imagery, our subconscious mind can't tell the difference between the image of something and the actual thing being in front of you physically. Your subconscious mind can't tell the difference between a person on the television and a person in real life. But more importantly, your subconscious mind will be affected emotionally as if it is consuming the real thing. If something really extreme or really depressing or really scary happens, your subconscious mind will think that it's watching that actually happen. Even if you're watching fiction and you know you're watching fiction, your subconscious mind will still be affected emotionally as if it's watching the real thing. And what's scary is most people don't even realize that they're being affected that way. Most people could watch like a really sad film or a horror film or something and then go on the whole rest of their day depressed about it, but not make the connection that they're depressed because their subconscious has absorbed that as if it was reality. And part of the addiction to media that most people have is because your subconscious mind feels like you have a connection to the media that you watch. Your subconscious mind thinks that you're actually there, that you're actually part of what's happening in the story. Your subconscious mind thinks that it's somehow sharing the experience with the characters on the screen. And sometimes if you spend too much time on a single piece of media, if you binge something too much, you can actually develop depression about that because your subconscious mind will start to realize that it's not actually developing any kind of satisfaction, it's not gaining anything out of these experiences, and that it's feeling kind of left out of everything. But obviously you're not going to get any of that satisfaction because you're not actually physically there. But your subconscious doesn't know that, so your subconscious tells you, hey, let's just go back to binging that thing again, and that'll make us happy. Let's just watch Lord of the Rings all day long, and then we'll be happy. Basically, with depression, media addiction becomes this continuous cycle where you keep engaging with a piece of media because you remember it made you happy one time. But that nostalgia that you're feeling for that piece of media is because you allowed yourself to be tricked by something that the screen showed you. You allowed yourself to believe in something once, and you keep going back to chase that feeling, but it's never going to come back. With this continuous cycle, not only will you never receive satisfaction, but you'll get diminishing returns of dopamine responses each time. You'll never be satisfied with what these devices show you. The medium is the message. Stay distracted. So again, this isn't just about the media being evil or the news being propaganda. It goes so much deeper than that, and so much further back. Even before electricity was invented, humanity was manipulated by imagery that made no noise. Mediums that showed us only still images or moving reflections. What's kind of perverse about imagery, the pervasive problem with it, is that imagery, especially imagery that makes no noise, forces us to project ourselves onto it to make sense of it. We have to project ourselves onto everything we see because the image gives us almost no information about what that thing really is. We can get a really good idea of what something looks like, but you can see a picture of a car, but you can't know how it drives. You can see a picture of your date on Tinder, but you can't tell if they're an asshole. What's scary about our own mind is that it has a way to work against us. Our subconscious has a really dysfunctional way of communicating with us. Our subconscious mind has a really strange way of operating. When we see an image of anything, and that image somehow makes us happy, our natural instinct is to project our own ideal about who we are onto that thing. That's the first thing our brain does when we just see an image of something. Isn't that terrifying? So when you got that cool rock star that you worship because you think they're perfect, you're not actually seeing that rock star. You don't know them. You can't know them. You're just seeing yourself. You think you're seeing a cooler version of you just killing it. And subconsciously, you've identified with that. That's how our brain works. We project the ideal version of ourselves onto everything. But reality is different. The screen separates us. The screen removes us from reality. The screen diminishes our ability to make any real connection. But because our subconscious doesn't know that a screen is there, it thinks it's making a real connection. But real life is different. You meet a person in real life and you smell them. You see somebody in real life and you can size them up and see if they're trying to pull some sort of like power move on you, or if they're have cool body language. In real life, somebody actually looks you in the eye. I'm not looking you in the eye. I'm looking at a camera lens, which, by the way, is a very hard thing to do. Not very many people are very good at doing that. Even most YouTubers just look at their own image on the screen when they talk. Isn't that distracting? It's like I'm avoiding eye contact with you. But people do this because they're narcissistic. They just want to see themselves be cool on YouTube. That's why they do it. Look at me, I'm being cool on YouTube. But in real life, somebody has to look you in the eye. And you can tell how sincere they are if they have trouble looking you in the eye when they're saying certain things or when they're being confronted with certain things. And a person's behavior can be very different based on each individual person that they're interacting with. So if they like you, they could be really cool with you. Or if they hate you, they could be kind of condescending to you. And then you'd be able to know more about their character because of that. But on here, everybody's always just being the cool version of themselves because they don't actually have to deal with you. I don't have to smell you. Like Kim Kardashian will talk really sweet to you on this thing because you're not really there. So she can just pretend like she's being the nice version of herself. But if you were actually in that room with her, she would probably treat you with a good amount of disdain, let's be honest. But you think you like her because you're just seeing the nice version of her. When you're consuming any piece of media, the screen will show you just enough information that you're forced to imagine all of the most important parts yourself. Your screen tricks you into projecting yourself onto everything. They know you're going to do that. That's how they trick you. Who are these people that we're being presented at their core? What truly is in their heart? What are the nuances of the situation that we're being shown here? By being forced to imagine all of those aspects that our screens are showing us, we're essentially being tricked into lying to ourselves about the reality around us. The Christians are all looking for some other person creating a mass delusion, when in reality, the deluders are us. We are deluding ourselves. Stop looking outward for someone to produce truth for you. Find the truth in yourself. Think of the subconscious effect that social media is having on you now that you can put up your photos and videos on the same platform as The Rock and Lady Gaga. Think about how your subconscious mind feels that it's connected to the world and the other people on your screen because it can see your pictures on the same platform as some other celebrities' pictures. Think about how your subconscious feels when you click on The Rock's video and he's looking you right in the eye and saying, "Hey guys, I'm so glad you're here. I love you." In the end, we've been tricked into believing that everything in the world, all of the celebrities, all of the most important figures and icons and heroes are all in reality just reflections of our ideal versions of ourselves. So essentially, we've been subconsciously trained to see everything in the world, all of the figures in the media, and all of the information on the news as ideal reflections of ourselves. The screen separates us from those things that are really happening. The screen separates us from reality. And we're just in a room by ourselves, thinking to ourselves, imagining what those images could mean, trying to reason the context, but we're not there with them. We're not actually experiencing that. We don't know what's actually happening. We don't know who those people really are. The mass delusion is a powerful deception because It's really just us tricking ourselves. F***ing diabolical. But that's exactly how Satan operates, giving us a choice that tricks us into destroying ourselves through our own free will.
What we do here is go back.
So again, the game here is tricking us into projecting. So I'm going to give you an idea here of how projection magic can work. Let me explain to you how a witch flirts with a man using magic. When hitting on a man, a witch might say something like, "Long hair is sexy," or "A good taste in music is really attractive." But notice how she didn't say, "Your hair is sexy." Notice how she didn't say, "Your taste in music is attractive." She left you to assume that she's talking about your hair and your music, when in reality, she never actually directly complimented you at all. Normally, when you're trying to give somebody a good compliment, you'll say something like, "Wow, your Star Wars toys are so cool," or "I like your medieval sword collection a lot." The point of a compliment is not just about verbally addressing how the idea of something interests you. A good compliment also expresses how you're emotionally affected by that thing. You address how that specific thing makes you happy. Your joke is funny. Your clothes are badass. But a witch will avoid complimenting something directly and expressing how that thing affects them emotionally. She isn't trying to develop a connection, she's just trying to get you to project onto her an ideal of what those words can mean. She's trying to get you to trick yourself into believing that those were compliments, that you're being admired for those qualities. She's baiting you into chasing an idealized version of herself that you've created in your own head. This isn't about me. I'm just explaining how projection magic works. I don't have any hang-ups over witches or anything. Educational purposes only. The great deception of the screen, the mass delusion of the image, goes all the way back to the invention of the mirror. Like I said, on these Kek god hieroglyphs, this woman sitting in front of the mirror, she's being affected the exact same way we are by our black mirror devices. Look at how she's transfixed by the way she herself looks. Look how she's just totally obsessed with her personal image. In societies without mirrors, the people sort of just wear whatever. They wear like dirty rags and shit. People would wear just whatever they needed to feel comfortable and to appear decent for society. There wasn't really much in the way of obsession or passion over beauty. Why do medieval peasants always wear dirty burlap in every historical film? Because they have no idea what they look like. They don't even think about what they look like. They have no perception of personal image. It's not part of their daily thought process. Like, I challenge you to go to a week or a month where you don't have your mirrors up and just get used to not having a mirror. Maybe just have a little one in the bathroom for, you know, when you gotta go to work or whatever. But just get used to not having mirrors around. Get used to not seeing yourself. And then just notice how comfortable you get with just never having to deal with your personal image anymore. That's something you're tricking yourself into thinking is important. Nobody really cares how well you take care of yourself, as long as you're not literally offending people. When you introduce a mirror to a society, suddenly everybody becomes very obsessed with their personal image. And that's the core of the Kek god's power over us, is that we have a natural disposition to become transfixed with ideal images. In fact, most people care more about the image of something than they do about the reality of it. They care more that something looks good than it actually functions well. Sometimes people can spend hours in a day staring at themselves in a mirror, constantly perfecting and admiring the image of their beauty. We're compelled to compose and construct our image to reflect an ideal version of ourselves. We try to build an image of ourselves that we believe communicates who we really are, who we believe we are, and who we want people to believe that we are. But it's just an image. This is why our society is totally broken. This is why everybody is so enveloped and bought into the matrix. People don't care about the reality of things. MAGA doesn't care about the truth of Donald Trump's character. All anyone cares about is the image of perfection, the image of power, the image of empathy, the image of concern, the image of wholesome family values. You watch Leave It to Beaver and you'll think that all those things are real. Oh, that guy over there beats his wife? Well, I can probably ignore that. I mean, just look at him. He's a cop, he's celebrated by his community as a hero, and his photos on social media promote Christian lifestyle. So, he's probably a good guy. These are the effects of demoralization. Russians, man. When you're recognizing qualities in a person or a character that you're seeing on your screen that you like in that character, the reason you like those qualities is because you like those qualities in yourself. You appreciate those qualities. So you're not really seeing them for those qualities. You're seeing yourself. You're seeing yourself in those qualities. And you're connecting to that person because they embody those same qualities, or at least they appear to be embodying those qualities. And unfortunately, our natural tendency is to assume, or want to assume, that because we recognize a few qualities that we have in ourselves in that person on the screen, then that must also mean, or could also mean, that they also embody all the same principles that you do. And because you don't have any real information on that person, all you really know about them is that there's a possibility that you're similar. And this is kind of like the first stepping stone to a parasocial relationship. And that's kind of what the Black Mirror is it's sort of like a soft parasocial relationship with just anything that appears on the screen. So that's the thing you need to remember about the people that you're seeing on your screen. You do not know who they are. And here's the thing, I can say I like you, I can say I love you, I can say I appreciate that you come to watch my videos and support me, but you can't ever actually feel that connection, and I can't either. So you have an idea of me in your head that is not real. There's nothing I can do about that, but there's something you can do about that. You can accept that you don't know who I am. Do that with everyone you see on the screen. Anytime you believe that you're seeing beautiful qualities in a person you're looking at on the screen, even if it's true, you don't know that. All you're really seeing is your projected ideal. You're just seeing yourself. When you look at me and you think you like me, it's because you are just seeing yourself. Do you understand? You're just the lady in the mirror. You're merely transfixed by an image, and your mind is filling in the blanks for you without your consent. You think that you're the one in control of understanding what you're looking at, but you're not. Your subconscious mind is. Turn off the screen, walk away from the device, and remember that this is not real. But this is where we're at now. This is what the Kek god has done. This is why Babylon has reared its ugly head one last time. People have become so demoralized in our modern day that all they care about anymore is the image of an ideal world. As long as these screens can continue to produce the image of perfection, most people will remain ignorantly happy. We are so fucked. History is a lie.